Welcome into the Lakers Report by Chat Sports. I'm Chase Sr., bringing you this video early on a Tuesday because according to reports, we have some big rumors to get to. Looks as though the Los Angeles Lakers, after the year, are going to be parting ways with their head coach in Frank Vogel. This coming from Jake Fischer of Bleacher Report. We'll break this down and take a look at some of the rumored candidates who could take over for Frank Vogel. Here's the report from Fischer. Now, as the finish line for this tumultuous 2021-2022 campaign mercifully arrives, the Lakers are still expected to part ways with embattled play caller Frank Vogel, sources told Bleacher Report, and the anticipated vacancy on Los Angeles' bench has produced no shortage of potential candidates linked to fill the position. Now, as I talked about, we'll get to those potential candidates later on today's show, but we've all seen this Lakers basketball team this year. They've been really frustrating to watch. So I want to get your one-word reaction to this Vogel news. Back a couple weeks ago, we had talked about some of these rumors starting to surface about the seat beneath Frank Vogel getting a little bit hot. He hasn't done anything to really save his job. So get into the comment section and give me your one-word reaction to this Vogel news. It looks as though he's going to be out. And while you're down there, if you haven't subscribed to the Los Angeles Lakers Report, do so right now by hitting that red subscribe button. Non-stop Lakers coverage all throughout the calendar year. Free agency, NBA draft, during this season, off season, we have you covered 365 days a year. So join the Laker Nation family here at Chat Sports and hit that red subscribe button down below. My overall takeaways after seeing and reading this report from Jake Fischer is that this is the first stage of the rebuild for Los Angeles, and it's the first of many moves that are going to follow. I think we're obviously going to see a new head coach. We're going to see some overturn on this roster, maybe even some trades. Does that include LeBron James, Anthony Davis, Russell Westbrook? I wouldn't rule that out. I'm not going to say all three of those moves, of course, will happen. I think the Lakers are going to move forward with LeBron James, but the point here being a lot of moves are set to happen for Los Angeles because ownership, the Buss family, they ain't happy with what they've seen the last year plus. Vogel's tenure, it has to be considered somewhat of a success, at least it started that way, then it fizzled out to a certain degree. 2019-2020, Lakers won the NBA championship in the bubble in Orlando, and I thought it was a really impressive playoff run. The following year, last year, they lose in the first round to the eventual Western Conference champions in the Phoenix Suns. But if Anthony Davis is able to stay healthy in that playoff series, I think Los Angeles has a great shot at winning that series. And if they do, what ends up happening? Do they hoist their second consecutive Larry O.B.? I think that was a potential scenario. And then this year, a disaster. The roster didn't make sense. Frank Vogel struggled. Anthony Davis got hurt. The Russell Westbrook experience was awful for Los Angeles, and it was one of the worst seasons in recent memory for Los Angeles. Currently, as we record this on Tuesday, 31-47, 11th place in the Western Conference. And when you play in Tinseltown, when you play in the City of Angels, that record to my right, it is not going to cut it. Now, I understand that a lot of fans are frustrated with Frank Vogel and how his tenure fizzled out to a certain degree. It was ugly this year. There's no doubt about it. I don't think that the front office did him any favors. Rob Pelinka, LeBron James, Anthony Davis, all of these things can be true that all of these people are to blame. But Frank Vogel, at the end of the day, does deserve credit for the championship in the NBA bubble. So don't sit here and disrespect him on his way out and let the door hit him on his backside as he exits the facility at Crypto.com Arena. Won you an NBA championship. So because of that, his tenure can be deemed a success. Do you think Frank Vogel deserves to get fired? Type Y for yes, type N for no. I more so tend to believe that this is just something that has to happen. Like, Frank Vogel doesn't deserve to get fired. This is a move that just has to happen. Let me know what you think in the comment section down below. As for the candidates emerging to replace Frank Vogel, a couple of notable names, a couple of head scratchers. Now, Jazz head coach Quinn Snyder might be the coach who is mentioned the most often. We did talk about this back several weeks ago when those rumors started to pick up a little bit of steam. Now, Quinn Snyder at the time had turned down those rumors, saying this, to be honest, Having to address this type of question in any form, in my view, is disrespectful to the teams that are mentioned themselves. I think specifically, these types of discussions are also disrespectful to coaches. And I love the guys that I coach. I love these players. And frankly, my focus is on our guys and our team. And as I said, addressing hypotheticals and these types of questions in any form, I feel like it's disrespectful. And that's how I would characterize that. Yet that hasn't dispelled the rumblings, this coming from Jake Fischer, that Snyder, a Lakers assistant, so he has ties to the organization, from 2011 to 2012, may be inclined to step away from the Jazz following the season, especially as Utah has taken its own tumble down the Western Conference standings. The Jazz have dropped 6 of their last 7 games, and once again, the microscope among league personnel has shifted back onto the long-term prospects of Donovan Mitchell and Rudy Gobert's partnership. More from Fischer here. There is, however, a healthy dose of skepticism around the NBA that Snyder would have interest in a hypothetical Lakers marriage. Snyder would appear to be just as prominent a candidate to one day succeed Greg Popovich in San Antonio, even if Popovich endures on the Spurs sideline for next year. Now, for the potential candidates who could take over for Frank Vogel, I think Quinn Snyder would be atop my list. Now, yes, the Jazz have failed to make it out of the second round of the NBA playoffs, but I really like how Quinn Snyder, during his tenure, has been able to maximize the roster at his fingertips and develop some of the players on that team. He has ties to the Los Angeles Lakers organization. I think he's one of the best X's and O's coaches in the NBA right now, and I love what I've seen take place with that organization, maximizing the resources as a smaller market, and him finding a way to really just be cool, calm, and collected during some of the drama that's taken place between Donovan Mitchell and Rudy Gobert. And I think his temperament would be really valuable for Los Angeles. But there are rumblings that Donovan Mitchell wants out. He wants to go to the New York Knicks, and he is not getting along with Rudy Gobert. Going to be fascinating to see how that plays out. Now, as I talked about, this is why you subscribe to the channel, because oftentimes we're ahead of the curve and we're ahead of the game, ahead of other channels in terms of these rumors ringing true, because that's just what we do here. We're built different at Chat Sports and on the Lakers Report. A couple of weeks ago, we talked about Quin Snyder replacing Frank Vogel. Yesterday, we talked about Anthony Davis, Russell Westbrook, some of the trade rumors taking place, and the fact that Magic Johnson wants to see this big three return to LA next year. And then we do segments like the top 2022 NBA free agents who the Lakers can sign. Some realistic targets if they're able to free themselves of the AD contract and Russell Westbrook contract, who they could ink to contracts to bolster this roster a little bit. That is why you subscribe to the channel, that red subscribe button down below, or in a separate tab, let this video roll and go to youtube.com/LakersTV. More candidates to get to. Maybe Doc Rivers on his way out in Philadelphia if the Sixers don't advance past the second round of the NBA playoffs. Remember this, Daryl Morey, head of basketball operations, did not hire Doc Rivers. It was former GM Elton Brand who hired Doc Rivers. So they're not tied in that fashion. Fischer on Doc. Doc Rivers, the Philadelphia 76ers head coach, is another active bench leader being mentioned by league personnel as a potential Lakers candidate. Rivers' tenure in Philadelphia has also come into question of late, spurred by team president Daryl Morey's deadline acquisition of James Harden and the mounting speculation that followed about a potential reunification with Harden's former Rockets head coach Mike D'Antoni. Now, if the Sixers, as I talked about, don't make it out of the second round, I think Doc Rivers is going to get fired because of the playoff no-shows and the playoff collapses that we've seen take place under Doc Rivers' watch. And when we talk about the coach specifically, the lack of adjustments and substitution patterns that I've seen from Doc Rivers the last 2 years with the Sixers and previously with the Los Angeles Clippers, very, very concerning. Now, he does have ties to the Lakers organization. He has ties to Los Angeles. He played for the Lakers. He coached the Clippers and really was able to make that franchise somewhat respectable, which at the end of the day is pretty impressive. But some of the things that I see transpire during games concerns me, and the blown playoff leads. I mean, he's blown the most 3-1 leads among all coaches in the history of the NBA. That, too, is a little bit problematic. Other names mentioned, and I'm out on all three of these cats. Kurt Rambis, yes, he has ties to the organization. A lot of rumors about him wanting to be involved in meetings with Los Angeles. That spells disaster. Mike Brown, yeah, okay, cool. I mean, it doesn't move the needle for me all that much. And then Steve Clifford, the former Bobcats, Hornets, and Magic coach also being talked about as a potential Frank Vogel replacement. You already know LeBron James is going to have a say in who the next coach is if he's on this roster. We talked about a couple of these candidates. Before we hop on out of here, who would you want as the next Lakers head coach? I want to see what Laker Nation comes up with in terms of Frank Vogel replacements. Some solid names out there. So let me know in the comment section. We want to hear from you. Appreciate all of you for making today's show part of your day. And don't forget to subscribe.